reframing disability is a recently launched not-for-profit organisation, and our aim is to change the experience of families from their earliest possible point, so that they can build the best life for their child. And yeah, our vision is to create a world that promotes respect, acceptance, empowerment, and citizenship of our children with disabilities and their families. So today we are going to be speaking with Melanie Dimmitt, and Melanie actually was at our conference not too long ago that we did with Reframing Disability and Reframing Autism and Now and Next. Melanie Dimmitt is an Australian journalist who has written for publications including The Age, the Sydney Morning Herald, Collective Hub magazine, Broadsheet, a whole host of others. She's a Perth native and she currently lives in Sydney. She's also lived in Melbourne and London. She lives with her partner and her 2 young children, but most importantly, I've got it here, she's the author of Special, and that's what she's going to speak with us about today. So I'm just going to hand you over to Mel, who's going to do a sort of abridged version of what she did at the conference, and then we're going to do Q&A. So yeah, feel free to jump through, pop through your questions at any point. So over to you, Mel.
Thanks, Nicole. Hi, everyone. Yep, I'm Mel. Lovely to meet you. Yeah, I live in this teeny tiny townhouse in Leichhardt with my partner Rowan and my 2 children, Arlo, who's 3.5 now, and Odette, who we call Odie, who's 22 months. And yes, I wrote that book, Special. I started writing it around about the time that my son Arlo was diagnosed with cerebral palsy at 6 months old. In a nutshell, Special addresses some of the obsessions you might have as a parent who has a recently diagnosed child, or if you've discovered your child will be traveling a not so typical path. So for me, those obsessions came in the form of questions. Why has this happened to me? Why has this happened to my child? Will I ever be happy again? Will my child ever be happy? Will my relationship survive this? Will I ever stop comparing my child to other children? Should I have another baby? And the big one, what will my future look like? So at the Now and Next conference, I spoke about expectations, in particular the expectations you might have around parenthood and your child. So yes, as Nicole said, I'll be doing a condensed version of that. My apologies if you were there and you already heard it. Heather, I can see you there. I know you did. So anyway, you're hearing it again. Yeah, I was really lucky in that I didn't have very many expectations around parenthood until I was pregnant. I didn't really think that much about being a parent or having a baby, but I did expect that baby to be typical, like the ones I saw all around me. I did not expect our story to swerve dramatically, of course, with Arlo's entrance to the world. I did not expect 4 days past his due date, while I was being prepped to be induced, that his heart rate would dramatically fall and then virtually disappear. So Arlo was born via emergency cesarean in about 10 minutes, and he sustained a brain injury through that process. And the specialists all said to us, you'll need to wait and see what this means for Arlo. And 6 months and a whole bunch of unmet milestones later, he was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. He's now 3.5. with epilepsy added to his medically complex credentials. He's non-mobile, he's non-verbal, he needs a great deal of assistance to eat, drink, move, and participate in pretty much everything. He's also a charming, beautiful, smart little guy with a zest for life that could rival the red, blue, yellow, and purple wiggle combined. He's everything to me. He's more than I could have ever hoped for. Absolutely nothing like I expected. So I think it's important, before we can start thinking about creating new expectations for our family, to acknowledge the ones that we had before and sort of try and understand why we had those expectations. And I think it's pretty fair to say we're conditioned by society, by the media, by Instagram, to expect that pregnancy, childbirth, and early parenthood and parenthood in general will all go a certain way, feel a certain way, and look a certain way, because of course we do. Babies are marketed to us in this really specific way, and we're only exposed to an extremely narrow snapshot of how things really are. Like, I'm not sure that many of us, I certainly wasn't aware that almost 1 in 5 Australians has a disability. It's an option, it's a possibility, and yet most expectant parents are only prepared for a perfect child. Excuse me, in my tea. So when things don't go this way and when expectations aren't met, some parents go through a period of grieving. I think fair to say most parents go through a period of grieving. But in the early months, weeks and months after Ali's diagnosis, grief was not a word that I like to hear very much around my alive child. But after speaking to psychologists and researchers in the disability space, I learned that it's very natural for parents to experience a type of grief when something like this happens to them. You're not grieving your child, they're with you. You're grieving the loss of your dreams and expectations, you know, around what their future was going to be and around what your future was going to be. So you're grieving the loss of those expectations and dreams. You need to build new ones, and you will build new ones, but something that often stands in the way of building those new dreams and expectations is fear. When what you expected is suddenly ripped away from you, you're left with this big empty void and a lot of unknowns, and we humans tend to fear what we don't know. And many of the parents I interviewed for the book tackled this fear by researching like crazy, getting on Google, finding out every possible thing they could about their child's diagnosis. And a lot of parents found this extremely helpful. I think it gave them a sense of control, or it at least distracted them. I did not find Google comforting at all. When you type in quadriplegic cerebral palsy, sorry, live under the flight path in Leichhardt. When you type in quad CP, what comes back is really hard, you know, to cope with. Statistics like 50% of people with cerebral palsy live in chronic pain were not very helpful for me to see, like certainly not in those early days. And the truth is, with medicine and technology advancing at the rate that they are, we can't possibly predict what our child's future will look like. We can't predict what anyone's future will look like. And if this experience has taught me anything, it's that I don't know what's going to happen. Anything could happen to me and my family, but I also don't know how I'm going to feel about that. You know, to my former mind, having a child with a profound disability was my worst nightmare, like an absolute horror scenario in my mind. And now that I'm living that scenario, it's not a nightmare. It's not horrible. It's not easy at times, but it's not bad. And a lot of the time it feels really ordinary and really normal. And our house is hectic and very busy, but we have quite a bit of fun. So I'm more inclined to tackle fear of the unknowns by embracing the mystery of our future. I try really hard not to dwell on what might or could be, and I try to let Arlo lead the way and just support him as best as I can along the way. And one parent who really helped me sort of deal with my fears around all the unknowns was Natalie Roberts-Mazzeo, who's the mother behind the Miracle Mama, amazing Facebook group and platform for parents like us. And her daughter Kiara has numerous diagnoses, including quad CP. And she said that her and her family have just learned to live with 1 foot in the mystery and 1 foot in the moment. And I just have found that to be the most helpful approach to parenting a child with disability. We don't know what the future holds for our kid. This is enormously frustrating, but it's also really, you know, exciting. There's space in that big unknown for possibility and for hope. And, you know, while I was interviewing parents, it became apparent that even the ones whose worst fears had come true, myself included, they all wished that they hadn't feared the future so much. And they'd all unearthed this bounty of treasures. You know, yes, Arlo is 3.5. He's not walking, he's not talking, but he's beautiful. He's the light of my life. He's smart. He's generally healthy. He's pretty much always happy. And I would never have found that by Googling his diagnosis. So I've learned to not fret about the future. I've learned to keep my thoughts in the present And I've learned how to recalibrate my expectations for Arlo and our family. Quick sip of tea while the plane goes over. Sorry, they're really bad tonight. So when a typical scenario is taken away from us, we're given this opportunity to do what we would have needed to do anyway, which is just let our kid be who they are, not project all our existing expectations all over them. We get to sort of take a step back and ask, you know, who do I have here? What are you up to? And what are you into? And a crucial part of creating expectations around our child's development is knowing how to best support them. And we can do this by putting a team of experts around them. And we have what we call our A team. Arlo's got a physio, an OT, 3 different speech therapists, a neurologist, a GP, a pediatrician, the list goes on, as I'm sure you'll relate. And I just think we're so fortunate with the new sort of individualized model of the NDIS that we really get to pick and choose who the members of our A team are. And once your A team is in place, they'll help you set personalized goals for your child. In the disability space, as I'm sure you might have heard, these are often referred to as inch stones, which is a term that really pisses me off. Some people like it, good for them. I can't stand it because it just feels like a bit of a consolation prize to me, like a lesser version of the real thing, like fat-free yogurt, I reckon. And again, it's about expectations. Children are expected to develop in a certain way. And so when they don't, it can feel like a bit of a failure and it can feel really unfair. And I can understand that parents who have children who only have mild form of disability, it might be helpful for them to measure their child's progress against the more typical markers. But certainly for me and for Arlo, who's at the more severe end of the spectrum, it's been super liberating to just totally throw out the rule book. Another one of my interviewees for Special was a woman in the UK called Lucy Sheridan, and she's a comparison coach, which is a thing. She helps people deal with the very human habit of measuring their lives against the perceived lives of others. And as a parent to a child with disability, I find myself constantly comparing Arlo to typically developing children and comparing my experience of parenthood to those that appear typical around me. I'm not sure there's ever a typical experience of parenthood, but it does feel that way. And certainly at the start of this, I'd think a lot about, you know, the child that Arlo might have been had he not had brain damage. Not so much anymore, but I would definitely spend quite a bit of time dwelling on that at the start. And when I told Lucy, this comparison coach, about how inch stones really pissed me off, how I just thought, you know, that wasn't a good enough expectation for my child and my family, she suggested that instead of striving for something that sounds really reductive, to instead just keep our goals wide open, to decide I'm not going to go on those markers. We're going to write the story from here. So once I'd finished writing Special, I felt completely different about our future. And this was because I'd immersed myself in the loving embrace of so many families who were all writing their own stories. And I truly feel there is nothing more healing and helpful than surrounding yourself with parents who are also raising kids with disability, be that online like we are now or in real life, and forming a beautiful community around you and your child. Those parents showed me what this experience can be like, that it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, that we would be okay, that sometimes we'd be even better than okay. And they taught me what to expect on this not so predictable path. And as a parent who's now 3 years into this gig, I can tell you myself, you can expect to be pushed to your limits and expect to grow. You can expect your perspective on life and love to rapidly expand. You can expect to learn a lot. You can expect to need help, and please, God, please, learn how to ask for it and accept it when it's offered. Expect to play, expect to have fun and laugh and cry, hopefully laugh more than cry. Expect your feelings around disability to change. Mine certainly did. Expect challenges, but also expect happiness. And expect a life that isn't necessarily any better or worse than what you'd imagined, just different and filled with some unexpected but wonderful surprises. Thank you.
Awesome. I'll pop myself back on now.
Hi.
That was awesome. Thanks, Mel.
No worries.
So I'm sure there's some questions out there that we will pull through as we go, but I've got some to get us started. Some you've probably just covered off, but we'll dip in and dip out as we need to. I know you spoke at the beginning about how you started writing this book during that diagnosis time. Was there a specific like moment that you can remember where you're like, I'm going to write a book, or did it start off with you just journaling some stuff? Like talk us through how you kind of came to writing a book.
Yeah, well, I was journaling because I was just doing that, and I'd been planning to write a book about my typical experience of parenting a typical child called The First 100 Days. So I'd made a habit of journaling every day after Arlo was born, and then that journal obviously started turning into a very non-typical scenario. But the book was totally fake at the start. I don't know, part of me thought maybe it could be a book, but for the most part I decided to write it so I could reach out to parents and interview them. As much as I now know that talking to other parents is the absolute best thing you can do, it makes you feel better than anything else in this scenario, I think at the start I didn't want to meet other parents. That would have taken a level of acceptance that I really didn't have. I've struggled to say the word disability at the start of this. So I certainly didn't want to run out and talk to other parents, because that would have been admitting it was real much sooner than I was ready to. But I thought, you know what, I can interview people. This way I can ask them the questions, extract the information I want from them. You know, tell me this isn't what I think it is. Tell me I'm going to be okay. Tell me I'm going to stop feeling like shit eventually. And then I could hang up the phone and be done with that. But as you'd expect, every time I spoke to one of these parents or had a coffee or had a Skype or a phone call, we were just like friends, like straight away. Not every time, but most of the time. And I just would come off the phone and just feel like I'm getting goosebumps now. I just would feel so much better. And I was like, wow, there really is something to this. And then, yeah, just common themes started arising of what people were telling me, this kind of shared language and shared experience, even though there were, you know, vastly different parents all over the world with kids with all kinds of different disabilities, that we were saying the same stuff. And I was like, wow, well, there are the chapters, there are the parts, and it started coming together. And I was like, well, I think there might actually be a book here that can hopefully help someone like me at the start of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that connection, I remember like doing my journey quite independent of any parents, not really through choice, but just did. And then when I first came to Plumtree, I was sat beside some amazing people, actually Nerida, who also spoke with you. And I think that that's really, really key in terms of parents out there like tonight that are sitting there who don't have that network of families around them, other people that get it. Is there any kind of advice you could, other than write a book and interview some people around the world?
Yeah.
That's a sneaky trick. Is there any other sneaky tricks you've got for us if we're not authors?
Yeah.
What would you do?
Well, in the early days, Instagram helped me so much, like hashtag special needs parenting. Like if you look up, you know, parents on there like Miggy in the US, Michelle Sullivan of Littlest Warrior, like seeing the content they were putting out there and just the language they used around it, I was like, wow, this is a livable, perhaps even quite amazing option for parenthood. So I'd say that. There are some great memoirs around. I wrote special because I wasn't quite ready for memoirs. I didn't want to kind of disappear into someone else's sob story when I was so wrapped up in my own one. But I found Ondine Sherman's The Miracle of Love really useful to read, and even like ones that aren't specific to disability, but Lee Sales' Any Ordinary Day, so good. Sheryl Sandberg's Plan B I found really helpful as well. I like books, so that's sort of what I wanted. Podcast. 2 P's in a podcast. I wish that had been around. When we got our diagnosis, if people aren't familiar, it's 2 mothers who've got both have sets of twins. I think they're in their teenage years now with disabilities. These women are incredible. They're laughing, they're having fun. They're, again, presenting a future for us that is not grim, and, you know, they're honest about it, but they're laughing, they're having a good time, they're living full lives. So yeah, podcasts are great. There's the 1 in a Million Baby podcast, which isn't going anymore, but it's still there. That was a really helpful one for me. The Advocate Like a Mother podcast, I think, they're a really good sort of avenue into this space, maybe before you're quite ready to start meeting other humans who are doing this thing face to face.
Yeah, I think that link is really important. And I think what you were saying about it not just being the sob story, like, I think what I love about Special is the humor that you bring to it. And I think having a positive outlook and it not just being work, like, obviously it's real, like there's real stuff going on, but it's not about you know, the martyrdom that you often can sometimes see. I think selecting, being really specific with what you're going to immerse yourself into is really important.
Yeah, I just needed something a bit, I mean, it's heavy shit we're going through, and I'm like, let's try and treat this with a light touch and put some humor in there, because I think we need a bit of that, certainly at the start of this thing. Yeah,
Totally. Awesome. So was it like a deliberate decision when you were writing the book, like a career decision, or did you feel like it was more just like, I've just got to get this out? Is that?
I had to do it, and it was career-wise, it was a really stupid decision, because it basically meant I didn't get paid for like 6 months. Like, I love my publisher, Ventura Press, but they're very small, very independent. I did not get a very big advance. I don't know if I'll ever see any money from this thing, and I got the book deal a lot sooner than expected, having only written like maybe a fifth of the whole. I'd done most of the interviews, but I hadn't written most of the book. So I had to get the rest of it done in 6 months, and that nearly killed. It was right after Odie had just been born, our second. It was an extremely stressful time, and I feel like I'm only just getting back into normal and paid regular work now. So no, it wasn't a wise decision, but as with things, it doesn't happen often, but sometimes in life you have to do something. I was desperate because I needed this book so much. I was like, why does this not exist? I need it so bad. And we made it happen, but I had a hell of a lot of support. My partner Rowan very usefully is a sub-editor and works extremely flexible evening and afternoon shifts. So I would just go for it in the morning. He'd work in the afternoon, evening. We'd swap the kids in the middle of the day. And he read the book for me. He did a lot of work on it too, subbing and editing. So I was extremely lucky with so much. I dedicated the book to him because I'm like, man, did you earn that? And I've just been the most crazy psycho person ever for the past year or so. So anyway, glad to be moving on now.
But it sounds like you did it as a team, which is awesome. Because we were talking the other day, and you and I were discussing how there's lots of families out there who are really struggling with that kind of teamwork, couple kind of thing. What sort of, did you get any advice or tips from people through your interviewing process?
Oh, hell yeah. Because this is I think early parenthood anyway is super stressful on relationships, and you add disability to that. And studies have shown how much more affected we are by stress and fatigue. And it sucks. It's not a romantic period of time at all. And that was definitely something that a lot of the parents spoke to me about. Some of them had split up from their partner, sort of in the really early days of their experience. Others were just not in a good place, like sleeping in separate beds and just being like, I can't even communicate with my partner a lot of the time, because unfortunately it's still the case. 95% of the time the mother is the primary carer, so they were the ones at the appointments, going to the doctors, doing the home exercises, really in the trenches with it, when the fathers would go off and earn the money, which is obviously also very important, but they'd be at completely different stages of processing what was going on. And there was a real miscommunication there, and a hell of a lot of tension came from the mothers being like, you just don't get it. You don't even seem like you're upset. And that caused a lot of tension. So the advice I got was therapy, like, if not just for you, like my therapist has helped me a hell of a lot, but couples therapy, getting breaks. I think getting me time for yourself does a hell of a lot for your relationship. I think Heather was the one who said to me, some of the best advice I got was, spend time apart, get yourself sorted so that you're even like remotely capable of being a partner to someone else. Yeah, taking breaks if you can, trying to have a date night. I had one parent, Joe, who every Thursday manages to get out for a date with her husband, which I just think is phenomenal. But I'd aim for maybe once a month, once every 2 months. I think would be amazing for us. But yeah, the big one was breaks. And like Ro and I do that. We just give each other an hour. Like that's all it takes, just an hour, piss off, walk around the park, go get a sneaky beer at the pub, whatever you need to do. And that just really takes the edge off. Yeah.
I've got a question here from one of our parents out there, and they've said, and this is kind of related to what we were just talking about, how do you kind of get over the guilt of not doing enough in terms of your child? Like, how do you stop? How do you go for your walk around the block or whatever?
Yeah. I know I'm a better mother when I'm looking after myself, but that guilt is hard. And especially at the start, I found it hard to even just have fun with Arlo. I was like, oh no, I have to be constant. If we're at home, he needs to be in a 4-point kneel or stood or propped against the couch or doing some kind of therapy the whole time, because now it's crucial. Now is early intervention. We only have till he's 5 for neuroplasticity, and just completely freaked me out. I now know that to not be true. And I'm like, this is shit. Like, I don't want his whole childhood to be him propped against a couch or him in therapies. And I certainly don't want his sister's whole childhood to be about Arlo's therapy. And I've only just started letting that go a bit and being like, you know what, I'd rather he had some fond memories of us having fun and mum not being like a stressed out case this, my whole childhood. But it is hard. And I haven't shaken it. I still feel like I wish there was more. Arlo has therapy appointments every day pretty much. And I still feel like we're not doing enough. I'm not sure that goes, but I know that I'm a better mother if I look after myself, and I know what I want his childhood to be. And I want him, now we're a lot more focused on his communication and his relationships. Like, he's probably not going to walk. I've accepted that now. We're still working on it, but I'm much more, interested in him having awesome experiences and awesome relationships. And since that shift has happened, and it took a while, I was obsessed with walking for ages, but once that shift happened, I was like, okay, like I'm a bit more chilled with the guilt, which is great.
Yeah. I think it's so true. I think we're so focused on the walk, talk, eat, all those really important milestones. And I think what shifted for me was actually when I met with and spoke with adults with disability that were, really quite significant with some of their disabilities, but had really good lives. And that's when I realized actually it is those relationships. It is that network of support around this child that's more important. And if you spend those early years just therapying your child, then you're not going to be a happy mum. It's not going to be a happy, and they've done like lots of studies on, that connection being so important. And I know you spoke with some adults with disabilities as well as parents. Is there something like, what was, I guess, the takeaways from that? Did that change your perspective at all?
Totally. It was, I'm doing some work with Higher Up now. So I've met more people with disabilities through that, and people with similar disability to Arlo, which has been confronting but really good for me. And chatting to her, woman I met, Fiona Given, who's in a wheelchair, incredibly smart academic woman, runs her own business. I was talking to her about, Arlo's got his walking frame and stuff, and just she gave me the eye, and I was like, I know, but we're much more focused on, his communication and stuff. And I think they just made me realize, like, being able-bodied doesn't make you a good or happy person. Like, Arlo needs to be nice. He's going to need to ask for help from a lot of people. And if he's an asshole, no one's going to help him. So I think it's much more important that he is a sociable, funny, happy guy than he's, walking. So I think, just realizing like, hey, you've got a great full life. You're not fussed about the walking. This, like you say, it just helps enormously. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm going to read another question here that I've got. How have your wider family and friend network adapted or changed with you? I found it exhausting to try and support our family and friend network when they want to help but don't know how.
It's hard.
Your book.
I suppose. we were really lucky. Like, I haven't lost any friends over this. Our family's been really good. I know that they've grieved, but they've kept it to themselves pretty well. I don't know. I think it's just a time, like, for you to just be a bit selfish. Like, I don't even know if it's worth expending that much energy if people aren't being good friends or good family members. But it is hard. And like, my parents live in Perth, and I think it's been really tricky for them being at such a distance. And I can sense, you know, when they see Arlo, maybe they're hoping each time that they'll see kind of enormous progress. And maybe this is all in my head, but I worry about, you know, them worrying about these things. And I'm like, oh God, just don't really have the time or the energy to dwell too much on it. But yeah, I guess what you could say to friends and family is just, you know, and even if you don't really want to ask for help, some advice I got is just tell them, I'd like some time with you, you know, if you want people to come around you more than they have been. But honestly, if people aren't up to scratch, it might be time to just cut those ties. Seriously. Yeah.
Energy wisely.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you've talked a lot about, I guess, staying in the moment and not thinking too far ahead. So do you have a vision of like life for either of your children, or do you kind of you're just going to take it each day as it comes?
Yeah, as much as I can. I don't, because I don't trust the universe anymore. I'm like, I don't trust that I can predict anything anymore. Like, we're doing our best in the day. Obviously, we're going to have to make schooling decisions and things like that. I can't just be totally, you know, not thinking about the future at all. But yeah, honestly, and I'm the same with Odie, and I know I would have been different with her had we not had Arlo first. I would have been like, prima ballerina, that's you, off doing that. And I'm just like, girl, you just do what you do. And Arlo's made me really good at that, and it makes you happier. I think generally it's that whole mindfulness thing that we're supposed to be doing, I think, for so long, because I was so scared of our future. And yes, our future will have a wheelchair, it will have hoists, it will have, you know, I'll have a son who I won't be able to physically hold. He's not getting any lighter, and that stuff scared me and still does scare me sometimes. So I just don't go there, just for self-preservation. But that process of just staying in the moment and practicing that, it just, you're doing it, you're in the moment, you're happy, because you can be happy in the moment. It's the only place you can be happy in. So I think it's actually helped me just generally be a happier, more grounded person.
Yeah. Cool. And so that's obviously changed the kind of mom that I guess you're saying that you might have been.
Yes.
Is there anything else that you think's changed for you as like a human being, like any kind of growth that you've had, or of the parents that you spoke with as well? Like, I guess if any reflections from them.
Yeah, we all talk about it being a secret. You suddenly got this way of looking at the world. And yeah, it was good to, you know, at first I was like, oh, our children are so inspirational, they change, they make us better people. And I was like, no, don't go there. Like, one parent said to me, it's not our kids' job to inspire us. But I think purely through the process of parenting a child with disability, you are pushed, like, you find strength in yourself that you had no idea that you had. And yeah, look at the world, like, I was such a fool before. It sucks to say it now, but I would have looked at, you know, a child with Arlo's diagnosis and thought, oh, that's not a life worth living. What a fool. Like, what a freaking idiot I was. And now I'm like, I've totally 180. Like, I look at the world completely differently. I see it for what it is. I see it for, you know, a diverse range of people. And I know that there are just different ways of being in the world that aren't necessarily better or worse. They're just different. So yeah, it's really made me grow up and see the world for what it is, and not be, you know, such a snobby elitist wrapped up in my own stupid bubble person anymore, which is great. I needed that.
Yeah, it's definitely changed. It's definitely changed my perspective on the world as well.
Yeah.
In terms of the title special, I was just wondering if you wanted to speak to that at all.
Yes. Oh God. And it keeps getting like misinterpreted.
That's why I thought I'd ask.
Everyone's like, oh, it's about special children. I'm like,
Yeah.
our kids are not special. Like initially when I called it special, I was like, yes, I'm going to reclaim that word. Our children are special. They're unique. They're so much better than average children. And then as I was going along and as Arlo grew into himself, I'm like, you're not special. Like not any more special or unspecial than any other kid is to their parent. What's special is our experience of parenting a child with disability. And what's special is how I watched as people meet Arlo and their perspective on disability, on the world, on everything changes. And, you know, this incredible community has formed around him and around our family. That is what is special. And that's why the book is called Special.
Awesome. I love how you bring out the idea that it's actually not that abnormal. Like it's not that strange to have a child with a delay or a disability. And yet it feels like that because we're not kind of exposed to that in mainstream culture when you're like, I remember like my child has autism and that's relatively like pretty common, you know, and yet the amount of leaflets I got when I was pregnant about all the different things that might happen to me or I should be aware of. And I'm like, I was the one that went to the GP and I'm like, my child has autism. And they were like, you're crazy. But he did. But that's because of the network of parents out there, as you were talking about. But yeah, I just think it's really important what you were talking about that we bring it more into every day. So it isn't special, you know, like it is a special journey to us, but it shouldn't be as unknown as what it is, because as you said, it's just a different a mix of whether it's, you know, we talk a lot about gender differences and you know, gay marriage and all these sort of old taboo subjects that, you know, weren't talked about, and now we're out and proud, but disability is still a little bit of a way to go, I think, before
and we just need to build more awareness and get our voices out there, because this is, I don't know if anyone there agrees with me, but you know, 3.5 years in, this feels pretty normal to me. And the only time it doesn't feel normal is when other people who don't get it say silly things, or, you know, if something's inaccessible, and that can all be changed. Yeah, we need to get our voices out there, get our kids out there, and just show everyone this is okay. It's often better than okay. It's not a horror scenario. We're doing fine. Thank you.
Exactly. All right, I'm just looking through our questions here. We've got one more. Okay. So you sort of spoke a little bit about self-care, didn't you? Was there anything else you wanted to add that you do for self-care?
Oh, mine are all really embarrassing. Well, probably not to be recommended, but
red wine.
The Bachelor, currently loving The Bachelorette. Like crappy TV. It has to be so lowbrow that it's just effortless to watch. But yeah, just like 10-minute walk. Like it doesn't have, I used to go to the gym all the time and go to bar classes like every day, and I don't do any of that anymore. And I thought I needed that to be a sane person. I don't. It can just be something so small and it just takes the edge off. Yeah.
And so is that similar or different to before you became a parent?
Oh, completely different. Yeah. My self-care was like so luxurious and like long and every day, and it looked like it does on Instagram. Now it's not. It's a bath. Like I love having a bath at the end of the day.
Same.
It's shitty television. It's wine. It's not like copious amounts of wine, but it's a glass most days. It's a chat on the phone to a friend or a Skype. Simple stuff, awesome. But it works. Yeah.
Cool. Just having a look here. What else I've got?
Oh, sorry if you can hear my children through the monitor. Let's turn the sound off.
It's bedtime.
It's a late bedtime. Rosie kicking them up, I think.
But they probably want to be on our show.
But let's not.
It would be entertaining. I love when children come on. Cool. So in terms of writing the book, is that something that you would recommend to families, like, or like journaling, that kind of like,
Totally. Yeah.
yeah,
Journaling, yes. Would not recommend writing a book. Like I said, it was highly stressful unless it's something you feel called to do.
yeah,
Um, Journaling, God, yeah, like the therapeutic benefits of journaling have been scientifically proven, and just getting that stuff down there is really healing, and also having a reference point, because it can feel in the day like nothing's changed, like you've made no progress. But if you can look back and be like, oh man, like I was really unhappy then, or this was happening then, and kind of have a reference point, it can really help you actually see progress. So
yeah,
yeah, I think not, I've been back because I write as my job. I've been pretty shit at doing it recently, but I can definitely feel the difference. Even if it's just, it doesn't have to be like ages long, even just some dot points from the day. And it doesn't have to be like, dear diary, today I did this. It can just be how you're feeling, or maybe like one thing that happened that day, or, you know, it can just, you can have your own rules. It doesn't have to be Dickens or whatever. You can just, your diary, you can do it however you want to do
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Checking in, make sure you're remembering who you are, what's going on.
Exactly. And it's a bit of
Yeah,
me time, and it keeps you in the present, and it gives you like 5 minutes to yourself and some quiet. So it's good
yeah,
for that too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. I've got a question here. What would you say to your future self? Ooh, what would you say? Sorry, what would you say to your future self from this moment in your life? To your
Oh, to my future self.
hmm.
Interesting. Just that I hope that, I don't know, I keep hearing that like women in their 40s and 50s care even less about, this sounds terrible, but about other people's feelings and about what people think of them and stuff like that. And yeah, just future self, I hope that you are even more comfortable in your own body, and you're just doing the things that you like, and you're having fun with your family, and not as stressed out as you currently are.
So one more here. How do you balance showing life is normal and you are doing okay compared to sometimes just things are a bit shit and tiring?
Yeah, uh, I own that. And I mean, within the same day, I'll find there'll be moments of, yeah, totally honky door, and no, this is like the shittest thing ever. It's very up and down, and I just embrace whatever that is. I don't try and stop myself from feeling crappy. If I'm feeling crappy, I just kind of wallow in it, but I'll do something that I know will help me. Like I'll go to one of the awesome quotes one of the parents gave me in the interviews, or yeah, watch the crummy TV, have the wine, go for, like, I know the things that help, but I don't push it aside because I'm like, nah, fair enough. Like I'm allowed to feel crummy. This is really freaking hard sometimes. We've
Yeah,
been in and out of hospital 8-9 times this
yeah,
year alone. Like that sucks. And that's really unfair for Arlo.
yeah, yeah,
No, there's no, yes or no about that. It's just sometimes this is completely terrible, but not all the times. And even in those stressful times, like we have so much fun in hospital. Once
yeah,
we're there, once Arlo's stable, it's actually pretty civilized. You're just with one child. You divide and conquer. I get a lot of work done. I read a lot of books. I watch a lot of Netflix in hospital. It's actually quite restorative in some ways.
yeah,
So yeah, I just go with it. Just feel the feels
yeah.
through them. Yeah.
Awesome. And you and I were talking yesterday about, yeah, that kind of challenge of not knowing what's around the corner, especially with medical stuff. You
Yeah.
know, suddenly you've got something like work lined up to do something important, and then bang, everything gets turned upside down. So I guess you're saying you deal with that by that mindfulness and
Yeah.
being proactive and just going with the flow.
Yeah. And keeping everything flexible. Like I'm so lucky my work is super flexible, and people are always understanding if I need to push a deadline because Arlo's in hospital. I can work a lot from hospital, which is good, but just keeping everything nice and flexible, but also not living in fear. Like we really want to go on a holiday, but we've been a bit like, oh, but Arlo's been in and out of hospital so often. It's like, you know what? There are hospitals pretty much everywhere. I think we just need to do that and go and just live our lives and just, yeah, deal with things if and when they happen.
Yeah. Beautiful. I think that's probably time. Is it Timekeeper. Yeah,
Right, was it on
awesome.
quite enough?
Crack open get rid of the tea,
I'll
crack open the
replace
glass
with
of
some wine.
wine.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much, Mel. Really
Oh,
appreciate
thanks
it.
for having me again.
And make sure you guys check out the book. Check out the book. We'll put and also we'll if you're not already on our Facebook page, everyone join on that, and we'll put a link to the special book on our Facebook page as well.